Gonna make a change for once in my life. It's gonna feel real good. Gonna make a difference. Gonna make it right. As I turn up the collar on my favorite winter coat, this wind is blowing my mind. I see the kids in the street with not enough to eat. Who am I to be blind, pretending not to see their need? A son's disregard, a broken bottle top, and a one-man soul. They follow each other on the wind, you know, 'cause they got nowhere to go. That's why I want you to know. Somebody's broken heart and a washed out dream. They follow the pattern of the wind, you see, 'cause they got no place to be. That's why I'm starting with me. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself, then make a change. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself, then make that change. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. Change his ways. No message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make the change. You gotta get it right while you got the time. Now you close your heart, then you close your mind. That man, with that man, that man, that man, that man, that man, that man, you know that man could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself, then make that change. Na 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 na. Gonna feel real good, yeah, 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 yeah. Na 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 na. No, no. I'm gonna make a change. It's gonna feel real good. Some more change. Just live yourself. You know, you got to start with yourself. Yeah. Make that change. I gotta make that change today. You got to start with yourself, brother. You know, make that change. I started with that man. You got to move.
asking him to change his ways. All right, well, okay. Welcome back to the Catholics Against Militarism podcast. Now you know what I have looked like in the car every single day for the last 2 months, ever since I saw the Michael Jackson movie. Yes, I have not been immune to the Michael Jackson fever that has swept the nation. And yeah, I didn't have my Michael Jackson doll. I used to have a doll from the 80s that I got for Christmas, and my mom probably still has it somewhere in storage, but I didn't have a chance to get it out. So the best I could do was Miss Janet, the vintage T-shirt from 1992 Rhythm Nation concert. So yeah, that's what I've looked like in the car. If you're listening to this and you're not watching the YouTube video, you just missed me jamming out to MJ for a good 5 minutes. And at the end there, I put up a little sign on the screen that said, "Thank you, Michael Jackson, for entertaining us and for inspiring us." Michael Jackson donated over $500 million to charitable causes in his life, and I sure do miss him. And the movie only made him. I loved the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it. It's fantastic. Yeah, I've just been swept up in this fever, and I also recently sent Nick Fuentes a super chat, and so I'm excited. I'm excited to tell you about that in this episode. How these things, it may seem like they're unrelated, but I think they're actually more related. And because I don't have time to do multiple podcasts, I'm going to do a mashup. I'm going to smash them. I'm going to smash Michael Jackson and Nick Fuentes into one episode. And I can promise you later on, I'm going to do an actual Nick Fuentes, Michael Jackson mashup. So stay tuned. Yeah, so the movie was great. I'll get back to Nick Fuentes in a minute. But the movie was fantastic, and it's gotten me in this nostalgic mode. Just thinking back to Michael Jackson, I was little. I was born in 1978, so I grew up with him in the 80s. Never knew him in the Jackson 5, never knew his disco phase. But when I was a kid, Thriller came out, and that was a huge part of my childhood, and just absolutely loved his music. And then, in the 90s, things kind of started to get weird. So the movie actually leaves off, it's mostly about him growing up and trying to separate himself from, his family. It just gives a really human look at him, because I remember when I was, a teenager in the 90s, things started to get a little weird. There were all these accusations against him. He was painted a certain way in the media, and so my idea, I kind of had forgotten what he was like in the 80s, just the talent and the celebrity and just the artistry and the dancing and the music. I myself, I'm a dancer. I used to be a dancer. So I've just been going back and just binging, like the whole world, just binging his videos and watching him as an adult now, because I didn't listen to him for so long. He kind of, even in the 90s, he was starting to feel a little passé. He was always cool. He was always a great dancer and a great singer, and his songs were catchy. But by the 90s, I went through my Janet phase. I was more into Janet Jackson in the 90s, and, there was grunge, there was Pearl Jam. And so I didn't forget about Michael Jackson, but he became more of like a celebrity tabloid thing than like the artist that I knew as a child. So it's just been really fun to go back and kind of see him through an adult's eyes now, and to appreciate him again. And the movie did a great job. Some people are upset that they didn't pay more attention to the allegations of child abuse, but I didn't realize until the movie came out and I started going down the rabbit hole of like looking into his life and everything, that he was found innocent on all charges. He was never convicted of a crime. And I didn't know that just from the way that the media portrayed him. I thought he must have been found guilty of something. And people will say, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. But going back and listening to interviews with his wife, Lisa Marie Presley, and Corey Feldman and Macaulay Culkin, it's like a lot of people who are really, really close to him were like, I never saw anything, he never did anything to me. And so a lot of the accusations, it's just really unfair. So I've decided to just believe that he didn't do anything to anyone. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, because, he was he was never found guilty, and there was no evidence of anything. So it's been fun to kind of rediscover his music, and it's put me in a nostalgic sort of thinking about the past and thinking about, the culture and the country that I grew up in, and how much has changed, which is sad in a lot of ways. But yeah, Michael Jackson, he did a lot of good, and going back and listening to his music, there was such a good message in so much of his music. He wanted to uplift people. He wanted to uplift people and inspire people. And he wanted to do that through his music, and then he did that through his charities and his donations. And wow, how refreshing is that? I mean, we are just surrounded, everything in our culture now is just so dark and so depressing. I was just kind of thinking back to, what I grew up with, and this is going to be quite a mashup. I'm looking at my phone again, like, what am I supposed to say in this podcast? How am I going to tie this to Nick Fuentes? There is a tie-in, but I got to kind of wing it, guys. Okay, so this has sort of been on my mind. Like in the 1980s, they had like Farm Aid. You guys remember like Farm Aid? My mom went to Farm Aid. I think she still has the t-shirt. I need to get that vintage t-shirt from her. But she went to Farm Aid. They like got together to try to help the farmers in America or something. And then there was the song We Are the World. And all the biggest stars came together to raise money for like starving kids in like Ethiopia or something. And that was certainly true in like the 60s and 70s too. Like music and art was like used to make a point about society and to speak out for social change and to speak out for good causes and to uplift people and inspire people. And I think a lot of that from the 60s kind of lasted into the 80s, because you still had a lot of those people who were, young in the 60s and were now 20 years middle-aged in the 80s, and they still had this sense of like social consciousness and like people like, I don't know, like Bob Dylan or whatever. Like Bob Dylan, there was a great documentary about We Are the World on Netflix. I'd really recommend it. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, Bob Dylan actually showed up to this thing, And so there was still that like hangover from the 60s, like in the 80s, of social consciousness and like using music to like inspire people. And of course, I mean, you had heavy metal and like you had Madonna and like stuff like that too. But there was still that sense of things. And Michael Jackson, going back and listening to his music, every single song. I mean, Beat It, like I never knew when I was a kid that Beat It was all, he was inspired. I found this out from the movie. He was inspired to write that song because of like gang violence. And so, yeah, the fact that he like wanted to use his power for good and to do something good for the world. And that really started, even in the 90s, I think that was still a thing. Like you had, I don't know, you had like even like rappers and stuff like coming out and trying to like make these songs. I can't, and nothing's coming to mind. I remember like Let's Talk About Sex was one of them, Salt and Pepper. I mean, it's like, it's not Catholic, but like at least they were trying to be like, hey, I don't know, they were trying to do something. Lauryn Hill was really good. Lauryn Hill had a beautiful song called Zion about like everyone in her life telling her to get an abortion when she got pregnant and she decided not to. And I don't know, even Tupac had like, I wasn't huge into hip hop, but it just seemed like there was a lot of that. And in the 2000s, it seems like really after 9/11, a lot of that changed. It just like went away. I really can't think of anything. I mean, this is also, I was getting older, so I wasn't as in tune with like music and everything, but, and I was starting to work, I wasn't just driving around in my dad's Saturn with the, with the sunroof open, like with listening to my CDs anymore. But, I really can't think of anything in the 2000s or in the past 25 years since 9/11 that's been like a popular song that like the whole world knows about that has a positive message. I mean, what the heck does Taylor Swift sing about? Nothing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if there are Swifties out there and you think she's doing a lot of good for the world with her music, but I don't know. I don't know. I just don't hear that anymore. So it's just been a very nostalgic thing to me to go back and listen to him and to appreciate like who he was. And I'm not saying I know everything about him, or maybe the movie was propaganda, but it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing, and I'm like missing him so much. So this had me thinking about, I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while about my experience sending a super chat to Nick Fuentes, which is actually pretty funny. So what was I going to say? Where was I going with this? Yeah. Oh, and also in the 80s. Okay, let's like think back pop culture. You know, every single TV show, and I've brought this up on the podcast before. I think I've talked about it with E. Michael Jones, but every single TV show in the 80s was like 90% were like family sitcoms. They were about families, and they always had like a good message in the end, like Family Ties and The Cosby Show, and even like Full House and Growing Pains, and I mean everything was about families. So when you're growing up watching TV, there was never anything like bad. It was all like, even though there was some bad stuff in it, it seemed like it always got, like, if there was someone who shoplifted in an episode, it was like made a big deal of, and it was like the message was like, this is wrong, right? Like at the end, they'd get caught, they'd get in trouble, they'd say they were sorry. Like, just this was the messaging and the programming on prime time TV. And like I said, I know there was a lot of bad stuff in the 80s too. I listened to Madonna. I used to like jump on my bed singing like a virgin, and I had no idea what I was singing. And I look back at some of the movies, like the Goonies and everything. Great movie, but like, lots of bad stuff in there. I'm like, Mom, you really let us watch this? But all the parents from the 80s were like, yeah, like we all just let our kids watch this stuff. We didn't know how bad it was. I talked about that a little bit in the last episode when I talked about Poltergeist. But yeah, and then it seems like as we went on through the 90s, everything changed. Do you guys remember that? And I'm going to get to Nick Fuentes. I'm going to tie it in. But it all changed. Like all of a sudden, like Howard Stern was like the most popular thing out there. Or not, I mean, everybody was listening to Howard Stern. What a horrible piece of, not him, but like, yeah, I mean, like it was horrible. The show was just absolutely terrible. This like shock jock thing. Just evil. And then every show in the 90s, there was this shift. Like all of a sudden it was no longer about families. It was like 90210, which was like about friends, like a friend group in high school, and like even Saved by the Bell. Did we ever see their families? Like it was just the friends at school and stuff. There was still always like occasionally like a message in the shows. Like remember when Jessie, I'm so excited, she took the drugs, like to stay up to study or something, and then like it was a big deal, like they all got her off drugs or whatever, so drugs were portrayed as bad. 90210, there was like the one virgin character, Donna, who was like, I'm saving myself for marriage, and of course she didn't end up doing that, but at least there was a character who was like, at least they were kind of talking about that as if it was a thing. It would be shocking in this day and age to see a TV show with a teenager who was like a virgin who wanted to stay that way. Like, I don't think that they do that anymore, right? But at least, I mean, it was bad because she did end up sleeping with David Silver, the DJ. But at least it was like discussed, you know what I mean? So there was 90210, there was like Saved by the Bell, and then the older shows like for adults, Friends. So you have Friends in high school, 90210, Saved by the Bell and stuff, and then you have Friends in New York City, and they were friends, and they were all just hanging out in these really nice apartments, like, being frivolous and funny, and I guess, I don't know, it was kind of shallow. It just wasn't the same. You have Seinfeld, all of a sudden you have a show where the whole point is to be about nothing. So not only did a lot of the good meaning and content of like any kind of positive message leave, but now it was like, let's watch a show about nothing. I never got into Seinfeld. A lot of people really loved it, but I just couldn't. I never thought it was that entertaining or that funny. I just didn't get it. Then we move into the 2000s, and you get Sex in the City. So now instead of Friends, which is just like ha ha ha, we're working at a coffee shop and hanging out and like falling in love and like dating in the city. Now you have Sex in the City, which was just pure poison for like an entire generation of people. And then you have The Sopranos, where now the hero is going to be a mob boss who just kills people all the time. You have Mad Men, about like a serial adulterer, basically. You've had Breaking Bad, about a teacher that turns into a drug dealer. So we had the rise of sort of the anti-hero in the early 2000s, and everything was just getting darker. Now we're going to be entertained by adulterers, murderers, slutty women sleeping their way through New York City. I mean, and then you had like Pizzagate, right? Remember with like when Pizzagate broke out and Julian Assange, and then it was like, wait, what's happening in our government? Like, who's John Podesta, and like what is like all that stuff with Hillary Clinton, or like it was just like what is going on? So then they put Julian Assange in jail for like 30 years. And then we had COVID, and it seems like especially since COVID, like things have gotten, they're not just about like, oh, the anti-hero. Like now Mad Men and like Breaking Bad and stuff looks like child's play. Because like literally everything, there's like American Horror Story, everything that seems to be entertainment now is just getting darker and darker. It's like Satanism. It's like just blatant like witches, demons, Satanism, serial killers. This show Euphoria, I don't know much about it. I don't watch it, but it sounds horrible. But there's this really popular show that just wrapped up, and I've seen other people talk about it, so I kind of know what's in it. Straight up porn at this point. Like Euphoria is just straight up porn, is what I've heard. So this is what is entertaining us now. And so there has just been this awful deterioration of our culture. And so I think that's why Michael Jackson is just having a moment again, and I'm happy for it, because it's like, oh wow, like this is what it used to be like when our music and our art was like, there was something uplifting about it. There was some kind of positive message. And so I think that everybody in the world is just reappreciating him again, because, you know, I was watching an interview with him when he was a kid, and he was so cute. I never really knew like him when he was in the Jackson 5 because I wasn't born yet. But he said, I sing from my soul. And he said, everything I sing is coming from my soul. I wouldn't sing it if it wasn't true. I wouldn't sing it if I didn't mean it. And that is like where his power and his genius stemmed from. Because he was not like auto-tuning his way through the music industry trying to create hits. He was like, you can feel it in the music. That's why I wanted to just like be on screen, because it embarrassed myself a little bit as my little tribute to Michael Jackson and to that kind of power of like, it moves us, right? Because he's talking from his heart. He's coming from his soul. And you can feel that in his music. And that is a gift. That is a gift that he was given, that he like shared with everybody. And so, gosh, I'm just obsessed with him right now, if you can't tell. And so how does this relate to the podcast? What else was I going to say here? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. So this deterioration of culture. Okay, so how am I going to weave this in with Nick Fuentes and tell you guys all about my super chat? Where to start with that? So Nick Fuentes, I don't think I need to talk about who he is. Everybody knows who he is right now, right? In 2005, or 2025, he had a real moment when, I mean, he had been suppressed and censored, and like, they just tried to ignore him for so long, and then they just couldn't ignore him anymore. So all of a sudden last year, he was interviewed by everybody. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Piers Morgan. Those were like the big three that I can remember. But everybody, all of a sudden, all the mainstream people wanted to talk to Nick Fuentes. It's like they couldn't ignore him anymore. So they're like, all right, let's just like, you know. Then they knew that if they had him on their show, they were going to get bazillion views. So if you don't know much about him, he's just a young guy in his 20s. And he started live streaming when he was really young. I think like a teenager. I don't know how old he was, 15 or something. And I'd heard about him from a certain someone in my life who for a long time was like, you need to listen to him. And I'm like, no, because I know he's like anti-Semitic, and this was many years ago now, and I was like, no way, I'm not listening to that. But there came a point when I sort of did start out of curiosity, like tuning in. This was years ago. And one of the first things that I listened to was, do you remember a couple years ago when there was this like guy in like West Virginia, and he was like singing, he's like this kind of, looked like a blue collar, like rural person in West Virginia, like singing. He was singing a song about about how unfair it is. I can't remember what it was about, but it was like the rich, something about the rich, and kind of complaining about rich people or whatever. And if for some reason I just happened to kind of like tune into one of Nick Fuentes' shows, and he was talking about that, and it was really funny. He really made me laugh. And like I said, everything in the culture right now is so dark, and even the things that are supposed to be funny aren't funny. Like they're always political, so they're not very funny. And even the stand-up comedians are just gross and disgusting, and I don't know, you don't have a lot of good comedy anymore. So I listened to him, and I was like laughing really hard, and I was like, and that felt good, just to have somebody make me laugh. And it was so funny because he was making fun of this guy, and he's like, somehow he went viral. But even when I heard that this guy had gone viral with his like redneck song about rich people complaining about rich people, there was something in me that was very suspicious, because I was like, nothing really goes viral anymore. I think the internet had kind of a heyday back in like, I don't know, back in the Pizzagate days and like Julian Assange days, where things really could go viral. But now if they go viral and everyone is watching it and listening to it, I think it's been pushed, it's been promoted. So he always has this interesting take on it, and he was hilarious. He was like, they're putting it out there like he speaks for white people, and he's like, I don't want this guy to speak for me. He looks like he has like $7 in his pocket, and he's out there. He goes, he's out there like singing slave songs in the woods, like, like, and he's like, this isn't like me. Like I don't identify with that guy. He's like this poor guy, that's like complaining about things, and he's like, I don't want singers and songwriters who are out there complaining about things like, oh, we used to be up on the on the top as white people, and now we're just getting crushed and everything's so unfair, and like, damn the man or whatever. And Nick Fuentes was like, I don't want that. He's not my hero. I'm not listening to that guy. And it was hilarious because when he compared him to this guy out singing slave songs in the woods, it was just really funny. So I was just cracking up listening to him, and I was like, there was something about it. I was like, he's right. Like, why is this image being pushed on us of, and then he had this opening to his show where he would show like a lot of stuff from the 80s, and he would show like, the positive side of like a lot of us remember from when the 1980s and growing up in the 80s, like about pop culture. And some of his footage was of Donald Trump, and he's like, I admire Donald Trump. I don't think he's a great dude, like, I don't know, but he's like, I want to like make something of myself. I don't want to say that this guy singing slave songs in the woods is speaking for me, right? And so he does oftentimes. I thought that was very interesting, because we know that there's kind of a crisis with young men in this country, and a lot of them are getting on drugs and dropping out of school and not going to college and committing suicide, and they're in a bad way. And here's a guy who's speaking to them, and he's like giving them a positive message. I mean, not all of his messages are positive, and I'll get around to that, but he seems to like, he wants to in a way lift people up, and he's always telling young men like, go to school, get an education, get married, start a family, like good advice that they probably need to hear. And so I was like, this guy's interesting, and he's hilarious. So I kind of started listening to him a little bit more. And a lot of his commentary kind of rubs me the wrong way. He's a little bit crass at times. But I really kind of appreciate I appreciate his humor. I don't know, maybe I have a dark sense of humor, but he's funny and he makes me laugh. So that's one reason I listen to him. And then I really appreciate his geopolitical take. Like, he seems to explain what's going on in the world in a way that makes a lot of sense. And the explanatory power of his streams and his podcast, I'm appreciative for him for laying it out like that, you know? So I kind of started listening to him more. And I think another reason I started listening to him is because he is the exact same age as the first students that I ever taught. So I started teaching in like 2012, 2013, and I taught freshmen in high school. And he is that exact age. So there's something about him that I'm curious about, because it's like when you start to like move into middle age and like you realize like you're not young anymore and there's this new generation and you're very curious about them, and I'm like keeping my finger on the pulse of what Nick Fuentes is like saying and what he's talking about. I feel like I'm tapping into like that generation. And maybe I do that because like I don't have children of my own, so I don't have that, you know, like parents with kids who are like 20 years old or whatever, 25, or 15 or whatever, like they're in tune with like the younger generation. And I do have my students, but my students aren't in tune with the younger with the younger generation, because my students are awesome. So my students are mostly homeschooled, and they're not really like, they're definitely, I don't know. And we also don't talk a lot about like just their life. You know, I have very limited time with them because I teach online. But because they're homeschooled, I feel like sometimes I have a very hopeful view of the future because I interact with my students and they're awesome. And they're not really but they're not a part of mainstream culture. And so I think Nick Fuentes is like, well, what is going on with this generation? Like, what are they thinking? And so it helps me to kind of see that. And that leads me to my next point, just kind of sharing a little bit with you guys today in a very haphazard manner. I want to talk about what I think is wrong with Nick Fuentes, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. I want to talk about why I started this podcast in the first place and where things stand kind of with the podcast. Yeah, so where things stand with the podcast. I created this podcast back in 2019. I started 2019. And part of the reason was because I was a writer. Prior to this, I used to write a lot. I wrote for LouRockwell.com, and he doesn't really publish my stuff anymore, unfortunately. But I started writing for him back in 2008. So for a good 10 years, I was writing a lot of essays. And I know that some people today even listen to this podcast because they discovered me there. And I think that there's a unique message on this podcast that, you know, a lot of people aren't into. So I used to do a lot of writing, but I kind of realized as the culture was changing over the course of those 10 years, I love to write, but I was like, you know, everybody's like kind of listening to podcasts right now. And YouTube was really getting big and everything. And I was like, well, I've had this privilege in my life to be able to speak with like Father McCarthy and other people of his generation, you know, who were active in like the anti-nuclear movement of the 80s in the Catholic Church, and those older people who introduced me to people like Dorothy Day and Thomas Merton, and I even in graduate school, like I didn't know about these people. Like I didn't know about Dorothy Day. I'd never heard of her. I took an independent study when I was in graduate school, when I was 28, when I was Nick Fuentes' age. And I wanted to do Catholic literature, like fiction and poetry written by Catholics. And so there's one professor at the University of Montana, I can't remember his name, he was the best. But he was like, I'll do it with you. Like, we'll just meet in my office and I'll give you credit. And so it was really cool because I got to do my own independent study. But he introduced me to Dorothy Day. I will never forget when he says, well, you've read The Long Loneliness, right? And I was like, no. Who's that? Like, what's The Long Loneliness? Who's Dorothy Day? And he was shocked that I had never heard of her. And I learned about Thomas Merton and all of that too. So there's this great, you know, and then I read, there's a great book called The Life You Save May Be Your Own, about Walker Percy, Dorothy Day, Thomas Merton, and Flannery O'Connor. So I read that, and it was just kind of very eye-opening. I was like, wait, I have been a Catholic my whole life. I didn't know about any of this stuff. I didn't know about any of these people. And so I know that, there's this movement now with the younger generation where they're all into Catholicism. So there's all of these converts to Catholicism. They're really drawn to the church, and I think we know why, because there's so much darkness and evil in the culture, and people are like, nah, I'm not going to get on board with that. So I think it's driving people toward the church. But when I started this podcast, I was like, no one, of this generation like reads Lou Rockwell. Like, it was kind of popular in like the 2000s, with like young libertarian types. But then the culture like moved in a different direction. It kind of went like further right, and libertarianism has now like fallen out of favor. And so I was like, well, I don't think should I keep writing essays, or should I just start a podcast? And it seemed like maybe video and podcasts were like a better way to go. And my main goal for this podcast was really to like give a platform to Father McCarthy and his teachings on nonviolence. I wanted to put that on people's mental map. I wanted them to have that as part of their constellation of understanding of Catholicism, because I felt that that was something that I was really missing. And I felt that it was such a privilege to be able to speak with people like Father McCarthy and get to know him. And I was like, how is this? But like, it didn't even get passed down to me. I'm in my late 40s now, and I was like, it didn't get passed down to me. And I feel like I have this like treasure and this like insight into this like 20th century Catholicism that was really great, like the anti-war aspects and the Berrigans and all this stuff. And now we should be tapping into that more than ever. But these young Catholics don't know anything about that. They don't know anything about that strand of Catholicism. And social justice has gotten like such a bad name, right? So I was like, if I do this podcast instead of writing essays, not only can I maybe reach more people by being delivering things like in a video form and on audio, but I could maybe provide a bridge, like introducing the younger generation to Father McCarthy, and I kind of wanted to have a lot of the older generation on my podcast and put them in front of younger people, because I thought they're on YouTube, so like this will be good. I can like just provide a bridge, right? Like to that, like help to pass this down or whatever. And so that was kind of my original intent. But I've become a little bit discouraged lately because I know how old all of you are on YouTube. I don't have stats for the downloads and the audio, but I know the general ages of people who watch this YouTube channel, and it's generally people who are baby boomer generation and older. And so I'm like thinking like, okay, that's great. And I'm so appreciative, and I'm so like glad that all of you like this channel. But that wasn't my original intent. Like, I'm like, I don't want, like, you all kind of know this stuff already about gospel nonviolence and this, this side of Catholicism that no one ever talks about. And all the hip Catholic people like Candace Owens and like even Tucker Carlson is like gravitating more, I think, toward Catholicism, but they don't talk about this. And E. Michael Jones was like the closest I could get, because at least he was very vocally anti-war, but he's so not on board with gospel nonviolence. And so it's kind of like I don't want to put a ton of energy, especially now that my energies are spread a little more thin, like into preaching to the choir. So I've been having like a moment lately where I'm like, do I want to keep doing this? Like 7 years ago, I made a switch from writing essays to doing this podcast. And now do I need to make another switch? Like, do I need to like get on, God forbid, do I need to get on like TikTok or something? Like, I don't know. But like, how do I get this out there? That's kind of like what I'm thinking about lately. And as many of you know, I'm doing my own business. I started my own business, and it's very demanding, and it requires a lot. It requires a lot to try to like, support yourself through your own entrepreneurial thing when you're really not much of an entrepreneur. Like, I'm more of a writer, more of a writer and a teacher. So it's been difficult. So I'm like, well, I don't know if I can continue to devote this much time to the podcast, right? So what am I going to do? So I was sitting there one day and I was going to do a podcast. And I was like, okay, realistically speaking, this is going to take me at a minimum of 4 hours, to prepare for a podcast, to record it, especially if I'm going to recruit someone to interview, prepare for the interview, at least make notes, and then you record it and then you have to edit it and then you have to upload it. Like, it takes at least 4 hours, but usually it takes more like 8. So, like, that disclosure day review that I did, literally from start to finish took like 8 hours. That's like a whole work day. That's a whole work day that I just lost to do a podcast. And so it's like I have to start thinking, like, now that I'm more of a business-minded person, now I'm like, my time has got to be worth at least $200 an hour at this point. Like, so I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, if I take 8 hours, right, that I could otherwise be spending like building my business for my future, that's like 200 times 8, right? So that's a lot. Or let's say my time is only worth $100. That's $800, right? So it's like, then I'm thinking about that, and then I'm thinking about like trying to reach this younger generation. I just want to get gospel nonviolence on their mental map. That's all I want. And by the way, years ago, long time ago, maybe even before I listened to that Slave Song episode by Nick Fuentes, I sent him some Father McCarthy stuff because he still published his P.O. box back then. I sent him some Father McCarthy materials and a letter, and I was like, you should take a listen to this. Because I was like, maybe a better way than me like putting up podcasts on YouTube for 200 people to watch, since the algorithm is never going to favor me. Maybe a better use of my time would just be to try to influence the influencers. Like, maybe that's a way to get this out. So I sent him that, never heard back, didn't really expect to. I probably just threw it in the garbage. But I don't know. Sometimes he would say stuff on his podcast, and I'd be like, I wonder if he listened to those Father McCarthy tapes, right? Because he does say stuff on his podcast about he claims to be he's not anti-war, but he's very anti-violence. So he doesn't have a very cohesive worldview overall, I would say. But, he does try to say, like, no violence, like, violence doesn't really solve anything. But then he's very, like, pro-war. So it's very conflicting. But that's okay. He's 27 years old. I don't think that my worldview is 100%, like, cohesive either. But anyway, where was I going with this? So, this is in me in my mind. I'm like, I could spend 8 hours making a podcast, right? Which would cost me $800 in my time. Or I could send Nick Fuentes a Superchat. And so I went to go send him, and I was like, maybe I'll just get this out there. Like, in some way, just put something out into the world in front of, because there's all these people that tune into his show. And he reads these super chats at the end, so he'll read what you send him on air, and then he'll respond to it. So I went to send it to him, and I realized that he limits your word count. So in order to write more and more words, you have to pay him more and more money. Pretty good business owner. So I was like, well, crap, I can't even say anything without paying him like $100. Nothing of substance anyway. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll send him So, and most of the people are disguised. If they super chat in, they use fake names and stuff because they don't want to be doxxed. But I was like, I don't care about being doxxed, like, whatever. I don't care if people know that I sent him a super chat. So I sent him a super chat one time because I heard him saying that he didn't understand, what was he saying? Oh, he was talking on a show about how he didn't understand violence in the Old Testament. So I sent him a super chat, and I was like, hey, I wanted to let you know that we talked about that. I'm Ellen from Catholics Against Militarism. Told him my name, said who I was. I was like, I heard you bring this up on your show. We talk about that in episode X of my show. And he was like, I'll show you his reaction to the first one. It was kind of funny. He was kind of like, whatever, like, I can kind of tell you're just trying to get in front of my audience. But he was polite. So then I ended up sending him 2 more. And so, yeah, my logic was like, well, I could spend 8 hours making a podcast, or I could spend $100, sending Nick Fuentes a super chat. Like, what has more potential for getting this out there? And I'm like, if I just send Nick Fuentes a super chat for $100, that's like paying myself $700. Do you see the logic? So I was like, forget it. I'm not spending the eight hours to watch and to make a podcast that 200 people are going to watch, most of whom are baby boomers, and I'm just preaching to the choir. So I'm going to pay myself $700 by sending him a $100 super chat. So if he was watching this right now, he'd be like, that's female logic for you. It's probably why I'm not a very good business owner. But anyway, that's what I decided to do. So I sent him this super chat. I can show you guys what his reaction was if you're curious. Okay, I found it. Here it is. So I wanted to help him out a little bit. So I sent him my first super chat. Ellen at Cam sent $100. Hi, Nick. This is Ellen at Catholics Against Militarism. I don't care about doxing myself. A few months ago, you said on your show that you'd never heard a good explanation for God commanding genocide in the Old Testament. I invite you, and then I went ahead, I didn't get the whole thing, but I went on to say, I invite you to, check it out, like it's episode whatever. You can see the look on his face. He's just like, so that one didn't go, that one didn't have the impact that I was really hoping for, He kind of rolled his eyes, but he was like, oh, but at the end he was just like, okay, thanks. And he just like moved on. So it wasn't super successful. Probably not a very wise use of $100. But it was my first little experiment. And I was like, what if I could just get on his his radar or whatever? But I was like, that didn't really work very well. And I think I need to do more to get on the radar, right? Like, because I don't know, would he come on my show? Would he talk to me? Well, maybe. I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? I'd love to talk to him. I have so many questions that no one has ever asked him that I would like to ask him. And there's reasons why I think he should talk to me, actually, because but I don't think the next one, I was like, this next one I have to be a little more strategic. I was like, I'm going to send him another one. It took a few months, but I sent him another one. And I'll show you what happened. This is what happened when I sent the second one.
No, but it is going to be a Latino futuristic empire, okay? I hate to be the one to break it to you, but white people, look, I love white people. I love being around white people. White people are beautiful. They're the GOAT. But white people have given up, bro. White people are out. I wish they would lock in. I wish they would tap in. Where are you, white people? Everybody's always saying, oh, you're a fucking Mexican. When are the white people going to stand up? I'm like, bro, I know. Who do you think you're talking to? I wish they would lock in. But all the white people are like, they're voting for Mamdani. All the white people are listening to indie music. They're going to some indie show. They're listening to some band with some ridiculous name. They're listening to some indie band that's like toilet paper ravioli. I'm going to Lugubrious Hot Dog indie show tonight. I'm going to, you know what I mean? Like every white person is, from my field of vision, every white person is in Wicker Park. It's like some faggot with like one sleeve of tattoos and like an ironic mullet and a stupid fucking mustache. And they're at some indie concert and the band's name is like, I don't know, Pop-Tart Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what white people are up to. It's like, can we start like death squads? Like, could we, not actually, but you're like, can we actually try to go and fight and take the country back? Or are we all just going to try to pick up the guitar this week, So, yeah, it's been sort of a letdown. So, yes, Mexicans, bring them forth. National Socialist Mexicans, bring them forth. We will save you from yourselves. We will get you going, okay? We're just the shot of espresso to get you going in the morning. I believe in white people.
Ellen sent $100. Hey Nick, this is Ellen of Catholics Against Militarism. Will you be a guest on my podcast? I'd like to 1. Upbraid you for your positions on war. 2. Educate your listeners about a potential draft. 3. Share a nugget of wisdom from my time in the Ron Paul R. Revolution. What do you say?
I have no interest in that, but thank you for the big super chat. Sounds totally insufferable. 1, it's a religious woman. Can anybody think of anything less appealing than for a man to be lectured by a religious woman on a podcast? It's like, what does it say in the Bible? A woman will not teach. So, no, I don't think I'm going to be moralized about war from a Catholic woman podcaster. Thanks, but no thanks. Appreciate the super chat and the invite, but I don't know. Why don't you talk to another woman about it? I'm good, actually.
Catherine sent $100.
Thank you, though.
Nick, nobody online.
So that's how that went over. I got a kick out of that. Okay, so don't be offended on my behalf in case you're feeling tempted to be offended. This was all he fell right into. It was all part of the plan. It was part of the plan, guys, because I've watched him enough. So here's a little something I've learned. It's a sales technique. It's called anchoring. Anchoring. Okay, so I knew that if I invited him on my podcast, he'd probably say no, like just because like I have no clout. He would think I'm clout farming. This is the term that the young kids use for when you're just trying to like get followers by being on his podcast or inviting him on yours. I was like, if he doesn't just straight out say no, what's in it for me? You have like 3,000 followers. I knew he would be like, no, you're a woman. I'm not talking to you about anything. Because he hates women, and he hates Gen X too. And I'm Gen X. So he hates women, he hates Gen X. Like literally the only thing I have going for me is that I'm white. And come to think of it, like this is not fair. Like he talked to Candace Owens and she's a woman. Hey, Nick. Little hypocrisy here. You talk to and you're a race traitor, Nick. You are a race traitor because you talk to Candace Owens, and she is a woman just like me, but you could talk to her. Maybe you were just clout farming. You're like, oh, I guess if I was a woman with like 1 million subscribers, then you could talk to me. Then I could teach. And she's a black woman, Nick. So you are a race traitor because you'll talk to a black woman, but you won't talk to a white woman. So you're a hypocrite, and a race traitor. But anyway, what was I gonna, wait, where was I going with this? Yeah, oh no, so I knew he would be like, no, you're a woman. So I was like, okay, I have to let him say no. I have to make sure he says no for the reason that I'm a woman. Right? Like I have to make sure that that's the reason he gives me as to why he will not come on my podcast. Because then my plan was to come back with a different offer the following night and say, okay, what if you came on my podcast and just talked to Father McCarthy? He's a man. And like, did Father McCarthy like know that I was going to invite him or ask him to talk to Nick Fuentes? No, I was just going to beg him. If it happened, I was going to beg him to come on and talk to Nick Fuentes because, or if they allowed me to be there, like the three of us on screen together, I was going to show up in like a burqa or something and just like not talk the whole time. I thought that would be really funny. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I have to make sure that like he's going to reject me because I'm a woman. So I was like, what would make him do that? I was like, I got to needle him a little bit. I got to poke the bear. So I was like, what if I tell him that I'm going to bring him on for the purposes of upbraiding him? And he won't like that. And it happened exactly as I knew it would. I was so happy. So I was like, and it was really funny too. So I was like, okay, he rejected me for being a woman. So the next night, shelled out another $100. And I came back and I was going to say, hey, Nick, what if you come on my podcast and you just talk to, a man, Father McCarthy, and I don't even have to be a part of the conversation? Would you do it then? That's called anchoring. So you throw out like a first offer that is not going to work. And then like in comparison with that, then the person's like, oh, okay, maybe the second offer is more reasonable, right? So I was like, I thought this would work. So the next night I sent him another one, and it took forever to get that dang video in there and like edit and everything. So I'm not going to throw it up. But the next night he immediately saw it was from me. It was like $100 from Ellen at Cam. And he's like, oh, this is a repeat from last. And he just, before he could even read it out loud on the show, he just deleted it. He's like, I don't know how that got in there. That's a repeat from last night. So my message was like, hey, what if you just come back and talk to Father McCarthy instead of me? Sorry, Father McCarthy, if you're listening to this, I was just going to totally like volunteer you for this and then like beg you to do it. But yeah, so then he just deleted it and didn't even read it. So Nick Fuentes, you owe me $100. I want a refund. Like seriously, I was only asking for like 3 seconds of your time, and it was not a repeat. That was a different super chat, and it was all part of my plan. And you screwed it up. But that's okay. It's your show. So I think I'm done with the super chats in terms of my plan to try to influence the influencers and get gospel nonviolence on the mental map of the younger generation. I don't think the super chats are going to work. So then I was like, okay, so then he has this like $100 a month like club you can join, and then you can be on like a group text with him and a bunch of people. And then I was like, okay, I'm definitely not doing a super chat now because if I'm gonna pay him another $100, which is ridiculous, like I don't have that money to be giving to Nick Fuentes. But I was like, if I am gonna do it, should just go in his private group. Like I should just like lurk, or just like infiltrate it, like lurk around in there and try to like plant little gospel nonviolence seeds in there. I don't know, but then I was like, I don't have time for that. I just don't have time for that. Although I do kind of feel like maybe I should. Like I feel like maybe they need some adult supervision in there. What's going on in there? But anyway, I'm probably not going to do it because I'm busy. Um, so that was my little adventure with Nick Fuentes. But since I'm not going to pay him $100 a month to go be in his group chat, I thought maybe by some chance he will watch this. And I thought that I could try to curry his favor by, doing something else, doing a Michael Jackson, Nick Fuentes mashup that I think he would like. So I'm going to do that now. I know how they think now, and I have to meet them where they are. So here goes nothing. Here is your Michael Jackson, Nick Fuentes mashup. Okay, this is for all you kids out there. Forgot how long these introductions were back in the day.
Think about the.
There's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love. And this place is brighter than tomorrow.
The voice.
You really try, you'll find there's no need to cry. In this place, you feel there's no hurt or sorrow.
Like an angel.
There are ways to get there if you care enough for the living. Make a little space to make a better place. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you
Wider
and
place.
for me. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. Will we live and for me, for our children and for me. Will we live and for me, for our children and for me. Will we live and for me, for our children and for me. Will we live and for me, for our children.
All right, there's my attempt to reach the younger generation. Okay, that was kind of a joke. That was supposed to be ironic. I think even like but I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about like what these groypers really care about. It's like the white people, whatever. And I get where they're coming from. Like they like, there's this immigration thing and they feel like their culture and their home, there's a whole conversation that can be had about that. I think we need to take it seriously. But part of the reason why I wanted to do my mashup, my Michael Jackson, Nick Fuentes mashup, is because like that, the genuine like power of Michael Jackson's music, the beauty of it, kind of mashed up with this like white consciousness, like it just doesn't work. Like it doesn't work, guys. Like, right? Like you can feel like which one is more true, which one is more beautiful, which one is more good, right? Like it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So there is something missing in like the Groyper worldview, and like no one is going to be inspired by this white consciousness thing that they are so obsessed about. And I'm not saying that it's all wrong or it's all bad, or I'm not even saying it's bad to talk about it. Like I'm glad that like Nick Fuentes is giving voice to this, how people feel. In fact, I think it's a large reason why Donald Trump got elected in the first place is, just a lot of the weaponized migration. It's weaponized and it's meant to create chaos and break down the social fabric, in my opinion. So I'm with him on that. But yet, we still need to aspire to something higher. And so I think the mashup between Nick Fuentes and MJ kind of shows like no one is going to really be uplifted by your white consciousness like thing. Like it's not really the ultimate. And if you're a Catholic and you're following Christ, like you have to see the discrepancy there, right? And I actually think Nick Fuentes does. Like I think that he goes to mass, he is a Catholic, he's a believer. And so I think a lot, I don't know how much, I don't know. It's like, can we elevate it, Groypers? Can we like take it up a notch? I don't know. That was my attempt. We'll see if it has any success. So I promised you that at the end of this episode, I was going to tell you what I think is wrong with Nick Fuentes. What is wrong with him? And I think I've figured it out. He grew up without Michael Jackson. He grew up without Michael. He was born in 1998. So, he didn't have that. He didn't have Michael. That's what's wrong. So in my next episode, I'm going to do a special episode for you for July 4th, the 250th anniversary of the United States. Michael Jackson, I think, was a great American, but I'm going to tell you who I think the greatest American was. And then the next episode after that, for any Groypers out there who might be listening, I'm going to tell you a bedtime story. So I'm going to read you a bedtime story, and not the next episode, but the one after that. It's just for you guys. So I want you to curl up and listen to it as you're going to sleep, and I think it'll be good for you. I wanted to thank the supporters of this podcast. Jeff, number one, Jeff, thank you so much, Jeff. Big hearts. Thank you so much for your support of my podcast. It means everything to me. It means so much. I want to thank Frank. Thank you so much, Frank. John, thank you, John. Daniel, thank you, Daniel. Sam, thank you, Sam. Teresa, thank you, Teresa. Joan, thank you, Joan. Laura, thank you, Laura. And Julian, thank you, Julian. And I have 8 monthly supporters, and I really appreciate it. I know that I don't do that many podcasts anymore, but if you would like to support the podcast, it would mean a lot to me. So I'll include the links in the description. And also, I didn't even mention, I'm teaching a retreat this summer. It starts on July 1st. I'll put a link to that as well. And again, just part of my efforts to try to bring gospel nonviolence to the younger generation. So we're doing a retreat. We're going to be listening to some of Father McCarthy's materials and reading the Hunger Games. And that starts on July 1st. So if you know any teenagers, high schoolers that would like to enroll, I think we only have 3 people enrolled. It's usually not a big It's not a big hit, but there's a small group. Whenever I do it, it's a very small group, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have some great conversations. And so if you have any grandchildren or children who are in high school and you would like them to do the retreat, it's not going to be a big deal. Just read one book in the Hunger Games, and then we're going to listen to some of Father McCarthy's talks and talk about it. So they are always invited. I think that's all I wanted to tell you today. This has gone on a long time. I have had to replace my lipstick 3 different times, if that tells you anything. So this is, been definitely working on this for about 5 hours now, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you some food for thought. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I was going to mention that I wanted to put in here. Nope. Looks like I got all my random notes. I would like to talk to Nick Fuentes, though. I think there are some very important things that he should be talking to his audience about. One of them is the draft and the Israelification of our U.S. military, because they're coming for you guys, Nick. They're coming for you and your followers, and you never talk about it on your show. And I think that you should be preparing people for that. I think you should be preparing people for what are you going to do when they draft you. And I'm a little bit worried that, without gospel nonviolence on their mental map, and without any knowledge of Daniel Berrigan and the great anti-war strand and movements in the church, these groypers are just going to be lost. What are they going to do? They're going to be I think it's going to be possible for them to be very manipulated, because it's not that they're against fighting, it's just that they're against fighting for Israel. So they all say, oh, we're not going to go die for Israel. Well, the thing about war is that it's not really a matter of who you're willing to die for. It's a matter of who or what are you willing to kill for. So once you start asking yourself that question, I think it's a bigger question, and I think it's a more important one. And I think that, Nick, if you're listening to this by some small chance, I think you should be bringing this to your listeners' attention. And I think that we could have a great conversation about that on the Catholics Against Militarism podcast. And if you don't want to have it with me, I'll find a man for you to have that conversation with. But on my podcast or whatever. And also, I think that's like the most important thing that you could be talking about right now. And you're not talking about it. So I hope that you think about it, pray about it, and maybe talk about it if you feel so inclined and moved. All right, everybody. I hope this was fun for you. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you soon. God bless you.